like our text says, to have respect of persons is not good for a piece of bread, for some sort of a amount of money or some tangible thing. You would not give an honest report. You would not be a good, faithful witness. That is, because somebody has bribed you with bread and you're not shooting straight because you've been paid off, so as to speak. I listed some things why it's wrong to have respect of persons. Number one, because it is unlike God, because God has no respect of persons. I like this thought, and I haven't got time to develop it, but I would feel that every one of us in this room tonight, that God is no respecter of persons. He does not give you any more than he'd give the other fella. He'll give it to you. He's just an honest God. He's straight God. He won't, let's say, I have a craving, a desire to be filled with the Holy Ghost and have power of God on my life. Well, that's me. But God wouldn't keep it from you. If you really wanted to have the power of God on your life, God is not going to say, well, I'm just going to give it to the preacher. No, he'd give it to every one of you. If you really crave it, God is no respecter of persons. And number two, it breaks God's law. And there is a Levitical law. It's in Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 17. Ye shall not respect persons in judgment, but ye shall hear the small as well as the great. That's a Levitical law that God put in the structure of Mosaic law, that a person, when you're making decisions, suppose you're on a jury making a decision on a crime case, and you show respect towards one rather than the other, then that makes you not a good witness, not a good person to sit in the jury, because most generally they'll call more people than they need for a jury, and then they'll select from them people that are not prejudiced towards certain things, so that you won't be tempted because you're black or white or Democrat or a Republican or a Mexican or a Chinaman or something or other, that you wouldn't show some kind of respect for one person above the other. And that's basic. That's a law of the Bible. Number three, it's sinful. I'm reading from James chapter 2, verse 9. But if you have respect of persons, you commit sin. And that's just black and white in the Bible. It is a sin to respect people and have more respect for one than the other. Number four, it causes anarchy or rebellion. And Romans 13, we're to love one another. But he also said in verse 7, render therefore to all men their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor. It's when you go against those principles in your life, you are doing wrong. Even in the instance, perhaps, of soul winning or witnessing or knocking on doors. Here's a person that lives in a little tar paper shack, and here's a guy that lives in a palatial mansion, and you have more respect for this guy in the palatial mansion, and you just, well, I don't even want to knock on it. I don't even want him to come to church. That's it breaks down the law of order that God created. He does not want us to have hatred. And number 5 is it breaks down the law of order and creates hatred. Look at Proverbs 24:24. That's just about a page back from where you are. He that saith to the wicked, thou art righteous, him shall the people curse. Nation shall abhor him. It's wrong. It's wrong to do that. And he said in verse 23 of chapter 24, it is not good to have respect of persons in judgment. You can see that it's something that is not just taught one place, but it's all through the Bible, even in the teachings of our Lord, that we're not to show respect. Brother Napper is really our visitation chairman. He does that basically for us at the church. And I said, but Bobby, what we have to do, we have to work with the people that God sends our way, whoever it may be that comes in the door of the church, rich or poor, whatever. We have to work with them people. Those are God-sent folks, and we can't show respect. We just have to work with them, and God will be blessed by that. In the book of James, I pick up another one of these thoughts. When I said number 6, it causes bribery. For a piece of bread, a man will, he said, a man will transgress. For money, for something of value. We have this shenanigans goes on in Washington, D.C. amongst our congressmen. They get paid off by big business. They may not give them money, but they may give them around the world cruise, or maybe put a new air conditioner in their house, or you can't do that. It's against the laws of God, and it's against the laws of our country to pay somebody off for doing it. It encourages bribery, and it encourages and condones sin. He that saith to the wicked, thou art righteous. That's a curse. I also think James chapter 2, number 8, it's contrary to the gospel. He said, I'll just paraphrase it. He said, if a man comes into your assembly, into your church service, and he has a gold ring, and maybe some goodly apparel, and there's a poor man who comes in, and vile apparel, and here's this fella comes in with this nice looking clothes on, and you say, sit here in this good place. But to the man that's not dressed very good, and maybe you haven't taken a bath or something, you sit here on my footstool. This is where you belong. One's placed up, one's placed down, and of course that is condemned in the New Testament as well as the Old Testament. So the thoughts of God is for us to love people and have no respect of persons. Pray for people that need to be prayed for, whether they're rich or poor, or wicked, ungodly, or whatever. Do good to those who despitefully use you and that sort of thing. It's all of a philosophy that the Bible teaches about being a good person is not to show respect to persons. I hope you can understand that. Number 22, Donna, I'm going to try to finish this chapter. He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. Money and riches accumulated at the expense of conscience and honor will give you very little comfort. I'm going to say it again. If you get money and you have riches and you didn't get it right, you didn't do it right, you took advantage of people, hurt some people in the process, he said you will not enjoy that money that you've accumulated. And you'll not have the honor that you think you'd have. He said, because the blessings of the Lord maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. Jeremiah 17:11, he that getteth riches, and not by right, shall leave them in the midst of his days. If you seek to get rich, at all costs, I'm going to get money. I'm going to have plenty of it. You'll learn in a bitter way that it doesn't pay. You'd be far better off having the rich treasures of a life serving God and doing right. That gives real heart satisfaction and joy and pleasure, really. What he's trying to say is we should never gain money by wrongdoing or by oppression of somebody else. You know those tax collectors in the Bible, like Matthew was a tax collector. Zacchaeus was a tax collector. They would be sent out by the king to gather the taxes from the people. And maybe your taxes was, let's say, $100. But he would say, your taxes are $200. You either pay it or you'll be put out of the house. Well, you pay the $200. He puts $100 in his pocket and gives the other 100 to the king. And that's the way they were pretty well paid. They overcharged the people. And when Zacchaeus got saved, he said, if I have taken any money by false accusation, he said, I'm going to return it back, restore it fourfold, because he knew that he had been crooked as a dog's hind leg, and he had to do something about that. And that's what went on all the time in Israel during those days of our Lord. And if you do right by God, God will do right by you, and you won't lack anything. You'll have a wonderful life, and you'll be glad that you did it right all the way. Never gain riches by fraud or schemes, or God will allow you to be worthless. If you get rich quick, usually the evidence of that kind of scheming is injustice to somebody else. Christians are to, of course, live right and do right and think right. And it's better to be poor and maintain a good conscience and a good testimony than to make haste to get riches and lose the sense of your communion with God. I'm being distracted, but I know what's going on. But I just say that, please, it's so easy when you see somebody that's in trouble that you could take advantage of them, or somebody that's weak, or somebody that's a little bit maybe mentally disturbed. You could take advantage of those people. If you have a covetous eye, it bespeaks that something's wrong inside of your soul, and you need to straighten that up with God. God will judge people that take advantage of other people. I was reading in Micah, the little book of Micah, chapter 9, verse 12. For the rich man thereof are full of violence, and the inhabitants thereof have spoken lies. Thy tongue is deceitful in their mouth. Jesus said unto his disciples, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now, I want to clarify this, that it really doesn't mean that because you're rich you go to hell. That's not what it means. I'm going to read Matthew 19:24. And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. There is, I'm sure that most of you ladies, but you men, a needle is what you sew with, you understand. But at the opposite end, there's a pointed end, and then on the other end, there is a little hole. They call that the needle's eye. And that's where you put the thread through, so that when you sew, the thread will pull in through and you can mend with it or whatever. Now he said a camel to get through an eye of a needle. A camel is a big animal. I would think that it's 7 foot tall, maybe taller, and probably 7 foot long, and great big legs and carcass and whatever else. For it to get through an eye of a needle would be it would be impossible. Now I'm not sure of what I'm saying, but I do know that I've been to Israel several times, and they have like gates that are open to the city or to an area of the city. The gates may be taller than this room. I've seen them maybe 12 foot high, the gates, and maybe at least 8 to 10 foot wide, where they'd come together. The gate would be high and broad and very thick and very strong, but down at the bottom of this big gate, they would put a little door. The door would probably be maybe 3 or 4 foot tall, and it would be kind of up a little bit from the bottom of the gate, and maybe be about that wide, so that after the gate was shut, a person could go in or out without having to open the big gate. They just open this little door like that's in the door of the gate, and they call that little door the needle's eye. Now it would be possible for a camel to get through it. He'd have to squirm. He'd have to get down on his knees, and he would have to take the burden off of his back, and he could have to humble himself to get through that little door, which is called the needle's eye. And I would kind of think that that's what the Lord was saying, that it's possible for a rich man to get through there as it would be for a camel, but the rich man would have to get down on his knees and humble himself, take the burdens off his back, so as to speak, and go through that little gate. Now, does that make sense to you? And that's would be my interpretation of that verse, but nevertheless, I could be wrong, And it may just mean what it means, that for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, impossible. That's impossible for a rich man to get to heaven. But I wouldn't think that would be sound doctrine in the Bible, that God would shut people out. Several rich people asked God how he could get saved, and he told them you'd have to sell all that you had and give it to the poor. And of course they would turn away because they had multitude of riches. And when you get rich, it does things to your mind. You don't depend on God. For instance, the Bible and the Lord's teachings said, "Give us this day our daily bread." That's a simple little prayer for the needs of your body. But when you are rich and you have 12, 15 loaves in the deep freeze, it'd be pretty hard to pray, "Lord, give me my bread for today," because you already had the bread. And you have all the things that you need for your days to come. Your barns are full, and it's difficult. Us people who live from hand to mouth, hand to mouth, and hand to mouth, we can say, "Lord, please today give us our daily bread," because our hearts are humbly asking God for help. But when a man's rich, he could say, "I don't need you, God. I got all that I need." But we do need God. And there are some rich people that have got good sense, and they know where their bread comes from. I'm not putting them down one bit. I'm not saying that. I think you understand what I'm talking about. But here's what he's saying. "He that hasteth to be rich and hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon them." If you remember reading in the Bible, there was a disciple, well, a secret disciple, whose name was he was the fellow that went to Pilate and asked for the body. His name was from Arimathea, Joseph from Arimathea, and the Bible said he was rich. He was rich. He was a disciple of Christ. So you can't be rich and be a disciple. If you get it in lawful means and not be stingy with it and not be proud because of it. But basically, riches lead away from God because you have pleasures, and you take advantage of the pleasures of life that most people can't afford to get involved with, and you pay the price because you've got the money to pay for this kind of thing, entertainment, whatever it might be, that would draw you away from God. I don't need to say anymore. Verse 23, "He that rebuketh a man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue." The person who kind of speaks the truth will eventually gain the person's favor. Than one who kind of flatters and lies about it. There's two kinds of tongues. There's a truthful tongue and a lying tongue. And flattery is sort of a form of lying. It's kind of cheap, and it is really counterfeit. It's hollow. Somebody said it right. I don't know if you know anything about making soap, but there's a lot of lye that's put in the soap. Somebody well said that soft soap is like soft words are like soft soap. They're 97% lie. And there's a truth to that. There is such a thing as having an honest appreciation. But please listen to this. It took me a long time to figure this out. you know, flattery is cheap. I could walk up to this young woman and say, "You're the prettiest woman in this room." And I've got a motive behind me when I'm saying that. And there's hardly a woman that wouldn't perk their ears up and say, "Really?" You know how that is. But it's flattery. But if I would say, "I really appreciate you being here. You look so nice tonight." That's honest appreciation. Honest appreciation and flattery are on two different teams. Flattery is like lying, flim-flam and windjam, and deceitful. But to give honest appreciation, now you're a fine young man. You look just good tonight. I like the way you keep your hair cut. You're not flattering him. You're just saying you're doing it right. You're keeping your shoes shine and your teeth brushed and your mouth doesn't smell like paper mill and so on and so forth. You know. Now this is and I would think that honest appreciation is a very helpful thing. And we're talking to Christian workers, and it's very good if you can continue to do this, to give honest appreciation. Brother Matt Dowdy is our youth pastor, and I saw last night at 6 o'clock, we went out visiting, and there must have been 15, 20 teenagers there to go out calling. And I whispered to him, I said, "Matt, you're doing a good job of getting these young people out calling, knocking on doors." And see, I didn't flatter him. I gave an honest appreciation of his efforts that he's trying to do with the young people. And that's a part of building a church and a Sunday school or an organization or whatever, is to give honest appreciation. But don't make it flattery. That would be wrong. I wouldn't think it would be wrong to say, "You're looking great today." I wouldn't say, "You sure do look ugly today." You know, I've been around, and there are people who are mushy-gushy, and it's slobbery. It's bad. It really is repulsive to most people when somebody is just more or less trying to butter you up to get something, or maybe get some money from you, and some personal gain at least. You know, the Lord is clear about this in the Bible. He said, Craig, he said, "Not everyone that says, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven." It's a flim-flam. "Oh, Lord." You can be super spiritual and self-righteous, pharisaical, but you got to be honest. When you say, "Lord, Lord," it means something, really means something to you. God sees right straight through all the mush and the gush, and you're not going to butter up God one bit. The Bible is very clear that God is not mocked. You don't make fun. Most folks can see right through the gush and mush too. But lots of girls and lots of fellows too have been slicked by people who know how to turn on the charm and don't always speak the truth. But I would say, if I were you and thinking tonight, don't be ugly either. Don't be, so you're the dumbest thing I've ever met. That hurts people. I don't like you. You're probably telling the truth, but you don't have to tell the truth. You don't have to say anything. You just keep your mouth shut if you don't like them. And you have BO. I can't get around you, but you always smell underneath your arms. You smell bad. And I've never talked to you, but when I get a whole whiff of that bad breath you've got, you don't say things like that. You might want to give them a mint or something, rather than it says a lot. But some people are so blunt, so uncouth, You can't do that. I know you want to tell the truth. You don't want to use flattery, but other things just need to be unsaid. Truth is far better, though, than flattery. So be careful of not hurting people. I've seen a lot of people get hurt. And I've known people that went to hell because somebody hurt them. And when you're wrong, somebody needs to tell you about it, but you have to be prayerful about how you come about to tell them they're wrong. And you could say, I wish you wouldn't do that. If I were you, I wouldn't say that. Or something of that nature of, I would have went another route to told them, or to do the same thing. You have to be as harmless as a dove and wise as a serpent. Just that's a part of the Christian work. I know what I'm talking about. That there's a way of being kind, and there's a way about being ugly, and if we can just learn how to be kind and loving and about it and never flatter, it's cheap. And it cheapens you when you flatter somebody. I've said enough. Let's go to verse 24. Whoso robbeth his father or his mother, and saith, it is no transgression, the same is the companion of a destroyer. You're talking about people that rob their parents. He says he's worse than a common thief. This happens a lot in homes. I don't know about your home, but we could lay money all over the house and nobody would touch it because they were trained not to touch somebody else's money. But there are ways of stealing money without picking it up off in the dresser or some way else. And that is by conning it, or here's $20, go to the store and buy a pound of bologna. Well, a pound of bologna might cost you $2 or $3, and if you just put the other $17 in your pocket and forget to give it to mom and dad, and they forgot about it, and you've got $17. You've stolen money. You take the car, and let's say, can I have the car? Well, yeah, take it. And there's a tank full of gas in that car, and you burn up 3/4 of it. You stole about $25. You ought to put the gas back in there, whatever. But they're just, the Lord constantly, from one end of the Bible to the other, is trying to build character into people and not to be ingrates and not to be cruel. I know young people that steal money from their mother's purse, their dad's purse, so they can buy drugs or whatever else they need. We have a lady in our church. She said the other day that our children came in while she wasn't in the house and stole her dishes so she could take it, they'd sell them down at the pawn shop, you know. Take this, take lamps, take this, take... That lady was in church last night. So I'm not trying to talk about something that isn't reality, but it's one of the worst kind of things. It's like biting the hand that feeds you, because your mother and dad do feed you. It's really kind of like a double crime when you steal money from your parents. Not too long ago, I had a case in point where a mother was on her deathbed, and the one daughter came to take care of her mother. And she knew that when the mother died, that all of the other girls in the family would be after her rings, So she got the rings that she wanted while she was there, nobody was in the house but her and her mother. Mother's in bed. And well, when she did die, they said, where's the, well, it was gone. It's gone. She had stolen. So whether it was hers, she would, no, that is still, you're stealing. You're not doing right. I know another case in point here, member of our church, whose sister, had a loved one die, and her sister is taking all of the money of this account, of this estate, and leaving none for the rest of their family, because she's shystering it. Well, you see, that is crooked. That's stealing. It's stealing something that belongs to somebody else, and it's really disobedience to God. It reveals that you've had some wrong training somewhere, some wicked tendency that's in your head and heart that you could steal something that doesn't belong to you. I'm telling you, my mother and dad put that in me. I am so afraid that I pastor this church. Things are all over this church, from one of it into the other. Things that don't belong to me, but they're not taken care of, and I could take them home with me. We could run out of toilet paper at the house. Say, well, there's boxes of it over there at the church. It isn't my tissue. I wouldn't take a roll of toilet paper out of this place. So, oh, Brother Green, nobody cares. It's stealing. It isn't mine. If there's something around here that's not being used, let's say there's a small I-beam piece of iron, maybe so long, I'm building a house and I need it put across the window, and I've come over and somebody who said, is this ever going to, no, nobody's using it. There's 3 or 4 of you witnesses, and I believe I'll take this home, and well, that'd be all right, and nobody will care, and if there is anything about it, we'll tell them. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a different thing, because somebody actually gave it to you. You didn't steal it. You didn't have to have a board meeting, because there was a 2x4 you needed. But